When I'm training,
I'm going to employ an IT person next year.
I feel like nothing is wrong.
Sorry, I'm not sure what. Now I'm nervous. You may want to plug your ears just in case.
When I'm training, I feel like nothing is wrong. I'll train for a few hours every day. I like to do biking, running, weightlifting. Depending on the day, I do weightlifting. I do a variety of different things. When people see me working out, they just see another guy at the gym. They don't see me, a person battling. A terminal illness. When I'm training, I feel like nothing is wrong. I'll train for a few hours every day. I like to do biking, running, weightlifting. Depending on the day, I do a variety of different things. When people see me working out, they just see another guy at the gym. They don't see me, a person battling a terminal illness. Nothing can prepare you for a life of serving this disease. It feels like I've been fighting an uphill battle all my life. It's been difficult. When I got really sick, I thought, wow, is this finally it? And I just said to myself, I've done all I could do. I'm alive today because I've been given the gift of life. It makes every day something to work for. You could say I've been given a second chance. I say I never gave up.
Sorry, you're muted right now. Apologies, but you guys are muted on your end.
We need all the help
Thank
we can
you.
get up here. Everybody, come on up. Did it work?
I think so.
No, it's good now.
You ask him to mute his.
Okay, so just thank you to everybody, and I'll continue. I'm post double lung transplant actually for 4 months, 4 years, 11 months today. Next year it'll be next month it'll be 5 years for me. Thank you. And if it was 4 years ago, 11 months right now, I would be in surgery getting my new lungs. So I'm very thankful to my donor, my doctors, my family, and whatnot. So I'm very humbled by that. And I'm alive here today at 60 years old with cystic fibrosis because of the support of my family, doctors, the CF community, and most of all, probably my willpower and fight to just keep going forward. Tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I have 4 brothers and 1 sister. I'm the only one that has cystic fibrosis. I grew up in the dark ages with cystic fibrosis. Back then, there was not a lot of medications. My nebulizer was the DeVilbiss handheld with a little bulb on the end, and I'd push it, and I'd get a flicker of mist, and I would inhale mucimist. There was no enzymes that were in pill form. There was powder that I would take and mix with applesauce. I slept in a mist tent for a while, and when I found out that was no good, so I'd wake up in the middle of the night and in the morning wet. I had a room with my 3 other brothers at the time, and we had bunk beds. And to be quite honest with you, the mist tent was a great toy for us. It was a very expensive piece of apparatus, as for my parents, but we looked at it as like a toy. Because on every Saturday and Sunday morning, we used to play Cowboys and Indians, and the mist tent would be the fort. So we would all love to go in there. I hated to go in, but my brothers loved going in there. We take the sheets and blankets and make forts with the bunk beds and end up ripping all the sheets and the blankets, but the mist tent was great, and we take the hose and kind of put the mist on each other. So growing up with cystic fibrosis back then was kind of, it was pretty unique, but it was really growing up in the dark ages. Everybody I grew up with cystic fibrosis, they're all gone now. They're not around. There was no such thing as PICC lines and ports and all of those kind of devices. When you got sick, you had to go in the hospital. And your IV back then was a little metal butterfly, which they take blood from. I mean, that was your IV. And most of the time they would break within 24 hours and you would be stuck a million times. And then if they didn't find veins, they would take these huge needles and they would do intramuscular shots, IV pushes, but they all had to be intramuscular. So it was kind of a war zone back then. I will tell you that some of the patients were better at putting in IVs than the actual nurses. And some of the patients, and these people were, I was older at the time, I was 21. They were 10, 11 years old, and they would tell the nurse, leave the room, I'll take care of the IV, and they would put it in. So it was like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. To be honest with you, ever saw that movie? It was a little insane. But I had pretty much a normal childhood. I wasn't diagnosed till I was 10 or 11. But I was sick a lot as a child. Pneumonia, bronchitis, asthma. They told me I had everything. But I would get sick a lot. So it wasn't the greatest of experiences, but I went about my life as normal as possible. My parents back then, when I was diagnosed, the doctor told my parents that you're lucky if your son makes it till his 16th birthday. So just keep him at home and keep him comfortable and relaxed and whatnot. My father and my mother wanted to just put me in a bubble and keep me at home on the couch. And my father was very athletic. My brothers were quite athletic. And so my father said, well, if Jerry's not going to be around very long, he's going to put me on the teams with my brother. So I'll tell you about that in a minute, but that was a roller coaster ride, me playing sports, until I found my niche. But I went to high school and I was involved in sports, believe it or not. And I went to college and I competed in college. I went into the career world. I went away to college and I had a roommate in college. I went into the career world. And probably that's the first time that I discovered really that exercise was the single most important thing in my life that kept me healthy. Because after about working 2 or 3 months, and I'm kind of an A-plus personality, I got sick. And I remember getting sick, and I never knew what a tune-up was or a clean-out. And I remember I was really not feeling well, and I was on Bactrim and these pills, and they weren't working. So the doctor said, well, you can go into the hospital and you get a clean-out or a tune-up, and you feel great. So it sounded like great, like, oh, my car is going to get tuned up. So I went into the hospital, and it was probably, again, that's when the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was pretty wild. At the time I was out of college, I was 21 or so, and I remember they had these little butterfly needles, and through the night it ended up clogging, and my arm was swollen, and I didn't know much about that whole experience. But the next day, before the doctor came in, there was a lot of people on the floor with CF. All these parents, moms and dads, would come into my room, and I had my own room back then, but that was unusual because I ended up rooming with a lot of CFers, as we call them, or I call them. And these people would come into my room and peek, and then some would wave and say hello or smile, and they'd go out of the room. And this went on like all morning. So the doctor comes in around 11 o'clock that morning, and I'm like, there's something wrong with this room, or I don't understand why these people keep coming in here. And he goes, oh, no, Jerry, that's parents. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, there's a lot of other people in the hospital that their sons and daughters have CF. And I was like, oh, well, why are they coming in here? He goes, well, they've never seen anybody as old as you. So I was like, wow, this is kind of like strange, right? Because my life was really never about CF. I did what I had to do and took care of myself. So after that, I kind of started to venture out into the halls of the hospital, and you started to meet them. And we would hang out together, and that's when I learned that people were putting in their IVs by themselves. I could tell you, it was really crazy. We would go into the Medicaid, we'd compare what pills people were taking, and if the medications, the IVs didn't come on time, there'd be a war zone, people screaming. We'd hang out and eat candy, and lots of candy together in each other's rooms, and they didn't care. That was the way of the world back then. But obviously things have changed. But I had roommates back then, and the physical therapists come in and bang on me and bang on him and cough. And I thought this whole thing was kind of crazy, so I would sneak out of the hospital, and I tell my roommate, just tell them I'm in the bathroom or something, and I would go out and eat normal food. And because I grew up in New York, so the hospital was right within great areas and neighborhoods that you can go out and whatnot. So that's kind of my world growing up in the world of CF. When I went into career, I used to just travel with my medications all the time. And if I went on IV medications, I would get a PICC line or a midline. I didn't have a port back then, and I would travel. and I get the little baby bottles, I used to call them, the little bubbles, and I would travel. And they said, well, you can do home care because they want you to live a normal life. But I continued to work. And I remember once I got in a lot of trouble. I was down in North Carolina and my little IV broke. And so I called up the home care and they said, okay, we'll be over there in 2 hours to replace it. And I was like, well, I'm not home. I'm in North Carolina. So they went ballistic and it was like insanity. And I said, listen, you told me that I can live a normal life, so I'm going to go out. This is what I'm doing. Said, well, you're not supposed to leave the state. And they ended up calling the doctor. The doctor called me. He said, they're going to send somebody over, but you can't just leave like that. Anyway, but I guess, the bottom line with all of this, it was for me, it was really just living my life. I have CF. I took care of it quite well. I lived way beyond the life expectancy. And, that's what I would do. And I would travel with my medicines and I took care of myself. And I remember once I had a bleed out on a business trip in Arizona. So I'm just giving you kind of the landscape, I guess. So I was down there and I would spit up blood every so often. And the doctor would be like, how much is it? And I'd be like, well, I don't know. It's a mouthful. I get a little rumble and blood comes up. And I said, to be honest, I find it kind of amusing. Like, what is this all about? Well, that's not a good thing. So this particular time, I was down in Arizona on a business trip. And, the funny part about it, I wasn't concerned so much about the CF. I was concerned about my job. Called the doctor, and I said, look, I'm getting more of that bleeding. So I'm like, how much? I said, I don't measure it. Like, how much? I mean, it's a little mouthful here and there. Well, you have to come home. I said, I can't come. I have meetings. I had a dinner appointment that night with clients, and they worked for Dillard's, I remember. So I went out to dinner, and my client was like, you don't look good. Are you okay? I said, oh, yeah, I've got sinus headaches. It's really bad, really bad. Because nobody knew about CF. They didn't know. I didn't tell people. It was like kind of don't ask and don't tell, and I lived my life, and it was working for me. During the night, I got up, and the time difference, it must have been like 4 in the morning. To use the restroom, go back to bed. And I was actually mad because I went back to bed, lie down. I had a few hours more sleep before I would get up, and it was 7 o'clock New York time, and I get the rumbling. I'm like, oh God, I got to get up now. I got to cough up a little of the blood, and I'll go back to sleep. The blood didn't stop. It was like red room. I mean, the blood was just gushing all over. And I was like, well, I never experience. I was there by myself. So I called the front desk. The front desk, they call an ambulance. I'd never been in an ambulance. But in the meantime, I called the doctor. I just thought I was going to die there. But they call the doctor, and the fire department comes to the ambulance, and they don't know what to do. They're like freaking out, like they won't want to touch me. Anyway, I went to everything worked out. I went to the emergency room of the hospital. They took me. Everything subsided. I remember getting blood gases, and I'm in the x-ray room, and they're doing blood gases. And my concern was like, I'm supposed to be somewhere and give a speech for, a presentation for the apparel industry. And I said to the guy, is that a phone over there? Does that like work? I can get an outside line. He goes, oh yeah. So I didn't call my family or anybody. I'm calling the guy that I worked with at Dillard's, the divisional merchandise manager, and said, listen, you remember that sinus headache I had last night? He says, yeah. I said, well, it got really bad. And I said, I'm in the hospital. And I said, I'll be out later, but, He goes, oh, do you want me to? I said, no, don't come over. Don't come over. So I ended up being stuck in the hospital because of the blood for 3 weeks. So there I was stuck in Phoenix Children's Hospital, I remember. I had no clothes, nothing. It was all at the hotel. And then so my friend, my client says, oh, do you want me to go to the hotel? But I was kind of freaked out because I'm like, well, I don't even know what that hotel room looks like. There was a lot of blood around. But they actually cleaned it up. So he went there and then shipped everything back. But in the meantime, once I started to feel better after a couple of days, I would get the lay of the land. And I went down, going to the chapel. I'd go to the chapel, and they'd let me leave the floor. Okay. And then at one point, like Phoenix, like, what are you going to do? I needed a taxi. So I'd go down there and sit in the reception area, and I'd see what people do. And okay, you get a taxi and you go. So I went to them because I needed clothes and stuff. And I used to work in the apparel industry. And I remember going back upstairs one day, and I had it all planned. And I said, okay. So I said to them, we're going down to the chapel again. Okay, just come back for your meds. Okay, I'll be back up. And I went down and I ran downstairs. I had needles in me. I ran downstairs. I got a taxi, went shopping, picked up some clothes, came back and thought, I got to be good to the nurses. I brought them boxes of candy. So when I get back, one of the nurses says, oh, you had a phone call. And I'm like, oh, who was it? He goes, I don't know. You had 3 phone calls, actually. And I'm like, oh, well, what did you tell him? I was at a test or something? He says, no, I told him you went out shopping. I'm like, how did you know I went out shopping? He goes, we know everything that goes on here. I'm like, oh. So anyway, but, the point being of all of this is that I think I've learned in life that, the CF doesn't kind of run my life. I have it. It's a condition. And I try to keep reinventing myself and live relentlessly because, that's what I have and that's what I have to do. I mean, I had a great career, and because of the progression of cystic fibrosis, I had to go out on disability, and I could have sat home and stared at the walls. But I started doing volunteer work at the Boomer Esiason Foundation. So I do a lot of volunteer work there, and it's fun. So I've really taken a lot of the work that I've done in the apparel and the fashion industry into the world of nonprofit. So I've created a lot of programs, except I'm not good with the technical. So here, so this is the Boomer Esiason Foundation. What our mission is. At the foundation, we give out lots of scholarships. So the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation does a lot of great research for a cure. That's not our world. We have a lot of people calling us for money for research, but we refer them right away to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So I've created a scholarship program there, and we give out probably each year over $500,000, depending on the year and the money that we raise, up to $1 million in scholarships for people with cystic fibrosis. Because I believe, Boomer believes in giving back to people with cystic fibrosis in the here and now as we await a cure. We all can talk about a cure, but there's a lot of hardships, financial hardships that people with cystic fibrosis face. We were just talking earlier about insurance and advocacy, and there's a lot of issues out there. So we give scholarships, we give transplant grants. Now, transplant grants that we give, we do not pay for a transplant. They're quite expensive. We'll have to relocate, so we help with those expenses. A lot of times if you relocate, you have to have a support system. So it could be your mom, your brother, your husband, your wife. Somebody needs to go with you. That's just the way it is. So normally they then have to stop their job or you have to move, and then there's another income, or you're paying a mortgage and whatnot. So we help with incidental expenses like that. And our grants range up to, $7,500, but that's a big financial burden that we help take off people's shoulders. I do podcasts. These are about people that are living, breathing, succeeding with cystic fibrosis. We do audio and we do video, and we have a website. And these do get sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, and we're grateful for that. So a lot of the programs I do, they're not just stuff that the foundation funds. They're funded through other organizations that we do. But they're all educational programs. We do CF Wind Sprints. CF Wind Sprints is about things in my life that have kept me going and healthy, I guess, to the ripe age of 60. The CF Gold Standard is a new program I've created, and it's really about everything in life. There's a gold standard. There's a certain standard that you have or should try to attain, and that's kind of the way I kind of run my life. And the CF Gold Standard is really about body, mind, and gym. We can all sit around and we can talk about, it's important. I'm compliant. I do my medications. But the other half of that is that you need to be doing exercise and that you need to have kind of a mental well-being. So really, body, mind, gym encompasses all of those things. A lot of people with CF could get depressed and, and they do their medications, but they don't exercise or they don't practice good nutrition. So that's the gold standard of CF. We're coming out with a series of videos on the gold standard. Are going to be quite pretty amazing, I think. So that's the gold standard. Um, we've created an action figure. I'm the action figure. The reason for the action figure is we're creating what's called You Cannot Fail hospital bags, educational bags. When I grew up in the hospital and spent a lot of time there in the hospital, that people with, CF, you go in and you get to the point it's routine. I would tell my parents, don't come anymore. This is ridiculous. Tell friends, this is, it's routine. Don't come. But, you still get to that point where you're forgotten in there. It's like, but you don't want to burden people. And there's always that nurse or somebody that will bring you that, newspaper or, cappuccino or latte or whatever it is. And that's great. And so I've created this program that's called the You Cannot Fail Hospital Bags, and we will be sending bags to people in the hospital that are in there. And a lot of this we'll do through Facebook because I have quite a fun CF group on Facebook that follows me, and I follow them. And it's quite good. And these are going to be people that are children, and they'll be adults. We're not going to send a little action figure to an adult that's waiting for transplant or whatnot. But we've created. This is the guy. This is the little action man, and we are having a little character. We have a comic. He's called Big Air Jerry, and this will be in the hospital bag. We're putting a T-shirt in there, a comic. For older people, we'll put I guess maybe a book that's called Sudoku. You do that, the word game. So just different things that are more age appropriate. Although I act like a child most times. Club CF is about people with CF living at various ages. We have a website for that. You're welcome to go up there and you can tell us your story, which is great. We have Team Boomer. I created Team Boomer, which is the athletic leg of the foundation. And it's all about exercise and people getting out there and running or biking and swimming. It doesn't matter. It's just get out there and get active. And that's been very successful. We've raised a lot of money there. Gunnar is now getting involved with the foundation. He does a blog and he's starting to do some podcasts that are called Own It and Step by Step. Bike to Breathe is a program that I created. Actually, I think it was, it was after transplant. So, I created Team Boomer. I thought, this is all about running and I'm getting older, so now I'll do Bike to Breathe. And I put together a grant and sent it to some pharmaceuticals, and nobody responded. I thought, well, this is great, because then I don't have to bike. And all of a sudden, the end of February, 3 pharmaceuticals responded. Sometimes it takes time, and they all were sponsoring this event. And then I was like, wow, I have to train now. This is serious stuff. I mean, I could run and I could bike and I could swim, but I never biked 500 miles. So we ended up doing it. It was quite successful. We biked the first year. I biked with Emily Schaller, who also has CF, but we're obviously very aware and conscious about cross-infection. We biked from North Carolina up to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Second year, we biked from Bangor, Maine to New York. Last year, we biked from San Francisco to San Diego, and that was 600 miles. We had to change the course midstream because I had a partial knee replacement in July. We biked in September. So we had to reroute things and take out a lot of the hills. I'm getting old now with CF, as people tell me when I tell them, well, I had a knee replacement. They said, well, what do you expect? You're old. And actually this year because Boomer believes it's really important to take things international, that we are one team. So we are biking international. We are going to be biking in London, Paris, and Ireland. And then we're going to be biking from the States up into Canada. So we're quite excited about that. So we have 2 bike trips. You Cannot Fail. You are the hero of your own story. This is a program that I created. It's about, everybody has obstacles in life, and you cannot fail, that you are the hero of your own story. It's just a great mantra. It's a mantra that I grew up with my my parents about CF. That's kept me kind of very positive about things. We have a website. You can go up there, and if you want to post your story, you can post your story. We don't put people's names. We'll put your nicknames. We don't put your picture up there. If you want to put up a brick wall and that's your picture, or the river, or your feet, or a rock climbing up a mountain, that's great. But we don't. It's kind of we don't want people's names. You can put your name up there as Big Air or something. Nobody's going to know what that is. But anyway, this is a great site. We have T-shirts and whatnot, and this is where the whole hospital bags and all of that will come into play. We have books. I have children's books. They're here. You can take them with you. 60 for 60. I'll just tell you about this program. It's over, thank God. Last year we were having issues with the Bike to Breathe, and I was talking to my associate. And I'm like, this is really ridiculous. I said, I'm 59 years old, and here I am running around with this stupid bike thing. And I said, this is it. I'm done after this. So he says to me, well, Jerry, he goes, I got the new program for you. And I'm like, what? He goes, it's called 60 for 60. And I'm like, what does that mean? What are you talking about? He goes, yeah, you're going to turn 60 in June. I did turn 60. And he goes, you're going to do 60 events in the year you turn 60. So that's where the 600-mile bike ride. And I'm really bad that way. Like, I thought, you're crazy. But then once something gets in my head, I create like it's a project. So we created this whole thing called 60 for 60. And the program is broken down into 60 events. 20 were in living, and 20 were in breathing, and 20 were in succeeding. So, some of it was go surfing, catch a big fish, exercise. I had to do 60 push-ups with some of the kids I coach. It was bike 600 miles. And kind of the succeeding was we did a blood drive at the high school, giving 60 pints of blood and whatnot. So that's a program we did. True Heroes, we have a program now that we're doing. We created, and we're doing it with Johnson & Johnson because True Heroes, it's all about teach, respect, and understand. And I believe it's very important for the nursing community. There have been such an influence, and doctors and whatnot in my life, that we have created a program, that we have created a course now that's being finalized, that will be launched at specific hospitals throughout the United States. So this is a major program we're working on now. The book, True Heroes, up for air. I have a documentary. My 5-year anniversary is April 18th. So the documentary we are going to release on Facebook for a week for free. So you can go watch it. It's available now. You have to pay for it, I think $9 or something, but it's a full-length documentary about me, my crazy world. And the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is getting behind it. It will be going up on public broadcasting, PBS, in May. So that's that, up for air. We have a book, too. Quotes, I like quotes. Hardship often prepare ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. So that's that part of it. I'll just quickly go into a little bit more about, me, the world. So the world of CF, you guys, you have, children. I'm not sure everybody who's here. I've heard some of the stories, but I'm deaf from a lot of my medications, and I don't wear hearing aids. But, I grew up, as I said, I grew up in the dark ages, and everybody I grew up with is pretty much gone. But today is a different world, and, as parents here, you should be really, really hopeful, and your sons and daughters should be, because it's an exciting time. The opportunities that are out there and the advances with the pharmaceuticals and the phenomenal work that the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has done is like, it didn't exist when I grew up. And with these drugs, if this stuff was around then, or even some of it like 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have needed a transplant. But, it is what it is. But today, like, young people and people that are in high school and college, their dreams become reality. It's like when I grew up, I joke about it, but we were in the hospital. They'd go for these IV pushes, intramuscular. I mean, some of my friends in the hospital, they would just yell out, "Oh, we're all going to die. What does it matter anyway?" It was insane. But today, with the advances, it's just amazing how much people with cystic fibrosis have to live for. Look, I'm not saying it's a rose garden out there. I mean, and I speak to people every day with CF because I do the scholarships and whatnot. But there's just huge opportunities out there, and the work with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the pipeline. I mean, people are now going to college like it's normal. When I was back then, people were like, "You're going to college? Like you're going to go away to school and you're going to live in a dorm?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But today it's more of a reality, and that's why at the foundation, Boomer believes in giving back to people with CF in the here and now as we await a cure, because we want people to live a normal life. People are having relationships, normal relationships, and they're getting married and having families. And when I grew up, that was just there was none of that was a discussion. You just wanted survival. And then the world of transplant. I remember my dad used to talk to me years ago about transplant. I was like, "There's no way I'll ever get a transplant. That's insane." But I got one just about 5 years ago, and it's changed my life. I mean, I can breathe, but you do trade one disease for the other. It's not the be-all, end-all cure, and I'll be the first to tell you that. But I can breathe now. My lung function is right now at 108%, my FEV. But that happens because of a lot of work. It doesn't happen because I just got lungs. It happens because I'm still quite active and pretty relentless about honoring my donor and staying healthy. I ran a 10K 3 months after my transplant. I don't know why I did that, but I was insane, but I did. And I ran it with my transplant doctor. The transplant, again, people with CF need to understand, like you really need to try to avoid a transplant as long as possible. And how you avoid that is through, being really compliant, but not just to the medications. It's a team approach with your doctors, and not missing your appointments and showing up 9 months later like, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm back," because that's not going to really help you when your lungs, you want to avoid a transplant. It's not, again, I can't emphasize that enough, because getting a transplant does not solve everything. And if you get a transplant and you did nothing before transplant, and then you get a transplant and you live that same life, well, those lungs, may not last. So it's important, if you do get the gift of life, to honor your donor and honor yourself, that you have a second chance in life, and to go out there and exercise and really try to take care of your health. I mean, I had 6 dry runs. That's insane. Does everybody know what a dry run is? Yeah, it's insane. It got to the point, like, it became, like, okay, what's next? And I'd call up and they'd call me about a transplant. I was not even like excited or like, "Oh my God, I'm got to go in." I'd be like, "Okay, are you sure?" I'd be talking to transplant. "Are you sure about this? Like, I don't want to come in and wait 12 hours, or kind of where are the law." I mean, I was bad, but like, once they were out of the country, and yeah, I mean, I was sat there for hours and hours, and then you go home. Look, I'm not complaining about it, but these are the things that you have to deal with transplant. So that's why when we talk about, CF Gold Standards, body, mind, gym, you really have to, as much as you can with CF, work your body, work your mind, and stay positive. So exercise for life. That's my key thing. If you walk away from this little talk with nothing else, it's exercise for life. And that's what's kept me healthy, 60 years old so far. And my parents got me involved in sports, basketball, football, baseball, cross country. I started on my own, and pole vaulting. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but there's a lot of crazy stories about that. I should have been, basically, the bottom line is I should have been on the little Pee Wee League. And my father's like, "Jerry's going to be with his brothers, because he's not going to be around long." That was what was said. And so I had the cleanest uniform on the team, and I would sit the furthest away from the coach, and my brothers used to My brother used to score touchdowns all the time, and I was on the big league with them. And my father would show up, to make a long story short, and if we were winning by a lot, well, I didn't know what was going on with the game, so I don't even like most of the games. We did March Madness, and I'm in last place right now with the pool at the foundation. But, you know, he would show up, and all I would do was look at my father, and he'd have this little wave he'd give to the coach, and that meant Jerry's got to go in now. And I would go in, and I remember this one game in baseball, my first sport, and they said, oh, there's this wild pitcher. I played right field too. Now, I don't even know if that's a good position now, but when I played, it was being like left out of the game. I'd be out there and, you know, counting the blades of grass out there, just praying nobody's going to hit the ball out to me because I can't do anything. So there's one particular time I was up to bat, wild pitcher. Now, again, I squatted, and I was little. I squatted down even lower. I stood instead of like 2 feet away from home plate or whatever you're supposed to. I stayed like 5 feet. This is baseball. I got hit in the eye with the baseball. They rushed me to the hospital. My father's with me because he was at the game. My grandfather comes up. My mother comes up. My grandmother. And all I can remember saying is, I'm not going to play this game anymore. I'm not playing this game. And my eye was swollen out. My father says, don't worry, Jerry. Just finish out the season. Don't worry. Finish out the season. And I'm like, okay. So, but I didn't play, and I'm not going in to play. But so then we went to football. Now my brother, again, I should have been on this little peewee. Little kids run around and don't know where they're running, but he put me with my brother. Jerry's got to be with his brother because it was all about my brothers, the family, because I may not be around. And now, really, the funny part about all this, unbeknownst to everybody back then, this all was the best thing for me because people with CF back then, they never exercised. They sat home. And I just started to think, well, I'm an athlete. So, but I wasn't, okay? So we played football. Now, my brother played halfback, so Jerry's got to play halfback. It's my father. Jerry is a halfback like his brother. Now, my brother would score touchdowns, run all over, score touchdowns, and then I only practiced, really, so then the game would come. But I think there must have been this hidden rule when we practice, just push Jerry down, don't really tackle him. But, you know, so the game came, and the same thing. The first game I didn't play because it was a very close game. Second game, like I didn't pay attention. My father, I could remember vividly. He'd show up with the dog. We had a German Shepherd. He'd stand up on the hill. And all I would do is watch my brother run up and down the field scoring touchdowns. And I'd be praying, stop scoring touchdowns. Because I knew my father would give the wave. That means put Jerry in. And I would be watching my brother. You couldn't even, all I just knew is that we were winning by a lot. And then I'd be watching my father with the dog on the hill. And all of a sudden, we were winning by a lot, and the wave would come to the coach. And I'd be at the end of the bench. You know, in football, they have a lot of people that are on the team. And I'd be at the end, and he'd yell out, Cahill. And I would ignore the coach. Cahill, get down here. I'd ignore him, okay? He'd come walking down the line near the bench. I called you twice. Oh, yeah. And he goes, you're going in for your brother. And I'd be like, this is not the right thing. So I'd go in for my brother, and I was really good. I knew the plays inside out, knew them. And the first ball, my father's up there, goes to me. And I had to go running through this hole, and I got like crushed. I didn't get hurt. I was like, wow, this wasn't like practice. Practice was different, right? And I thought, and then the next thing, that, oh, well, we're going to give it to you again, Jerry. And we're going to throw it to you, and you got to go around the outside. And I'm like, okay. So I got the ball. Like, luckily, I caught it. It was like a little lob pass. And I start running, like, around the outside. And these people were running at me. And they're big. They're a lot bigger than me, okay, because I was little. And I was on the wrong league because of my father. And so I started running the other way on the field. And I just ran out of bounds. And I looked, and all I cared about, I looked up at my father, and he's up there laughing. And I'm thinking, you're laughing, and I'm running for my life. So when the game, and my brother starts screaming out, what are you doing running the wrong way? So I ended up, after it was all over, I'm not playing this game anymore. Okay, I'm in the wrong league. I'm not playing it. So finish out the season. Okay, finish out the season, went to basketball. Now basketball, I loved basketball. I would run up and down the court. Nobody was crushing me, hitting me. I didn't do well, but I loved it. And I was running up and down and coughing and stuff. And it was the best thing for me in CF. So I got out of high school, got out of grammar school. So I really thought I was an athlete, right? So I go to high school. I'm a basketball player, and I said I'm trying out for basketball team. Now in high school, you try for basketball, and they put the sheet up the next day who was cut or not cut. So I show up the next day, and I'm looking at and all the kids are around there, and I'm like, I don't see my name up there. So this little wise ass says, well, if your name's not up there, you were cut. I'm like, what do you mean I was cut? He goes, you didn't make the team. You're not good enough, right? I'm like, oh. So then in high school, the way it works, I guess, I don't know if I'm sure it does. Like there's people that go to cross country because they didn't make any other team. Okay. Or there are people in high school that are freshmen and they're working on their college resume already. And they have to have extracurricular activities. So I joined cross country. Now, a CFer running cross country. Back then, none of this was even heard of, but I thought nothing of it. So I joined cross country, and I'd go out and run, and there was usually three groups. One group, this group was like, they'll go out to do the work. And the coach would say, okay, your workout today is go run 5 miles. So this group would go out, they'd be done in, half hour, whatever. The other group was like, they were really pretty good, but not that elite group. Then I was there. Now, I never thought this. I learned it kind of later. My group was that group that kind of, for the people that were working on their college resume already. They were terrible. They would talk about the homework assignments and, can you have the assignment or I'll meet you later. And there I was running and jogging a little bit, and we'd jog, walk, plod along. And they're like, what's wrong with you? You cough. I said, oh, I got allergies or asthma. And it was great. The kids didn't care. Oh, that's good. Fine. No big deal. And I would just keep running. But like I said, unbeknownst to everybody, it was the best thing for me. And from there, I went into, pole vaulting and all of that stuff. And pole vaulting was great because I was doing weightlifting, gymnastics, and running. So I was staying healthy. I never went in the hospital until I graduated college. And that's when I had my first tune-up, okay, which that was the cuckoo's nest. But, I would tell you that exercise for anybody with CF, the single most important thing is exercise. Tell anybody with CF that, and to their parents. And that the most important thing is really, no matter what, is to try to stay clear. And staying clear is listen, going out and exercising, you might say, well, I cough. I can't breathe, but you got to start somewhere and do it. And the coughing makes your abdominals a lot stronger, so you can cough up and give the doctors cultures, so you don't have to worry about, bronchoscopies and all that. So anyway, my goals really now, like, people say to me, like, well, what are you still doing? You had a transplant, like, go get on with your life. I mean, go back to whatever. And I guess for me, it's like, I still do what I do, and I'm involved with the foundation because, I just feel it's important in life. I've been given the gift of life, and it's important to be able to pass on like what I've learned in life to other people. If I went back to the industry I was in, it would probably kill me because I traveled probably 75% of the time, and it was quite stressful in sales and management. So I do what I do. And listen, there's always, I'm passionate about it. My dream is that, there will be a cure, but until that time, that, everybody with CF, that they will have a great quality of life. And as much as I can instill in them to live a normal life, and, CF is a condition. When I grew up, it was a life threatening, it was a death sentence, but it's not that way anymore. Yes, there is still people out there, and friends of mine have passed away and whatnot, but you got to kind of just keep looking forward and live in the forward of possibilities and change. Another program we do is called Jump the Fear. There's power in believing that you cannot fail, and it's really important for people with CF or whatever you're facing, that to keep pushing through, and you'll get through it. And it's really important for me is like just to be relentless in life. I don't take, I just don't accept things with CF or whatever, or even with transplant, I make sure it gets fixed. Post-transplant, I've had my gallbladder out, I've had skin cancers, and it's still a rocky road. It's not like I have new lungs and I can just pop out of the box like a jack in the box. But it's still a lot of work. But I do believe that together that we cannot fail, and that it's important to exercise for life, and as I said, to stay clear. If you have questions, please feel free to ask whatever you want. I'm an open book. And I have a video, or last video we can show you. And that's that. Any questions or? Oh, wow. Quite, yeah.
What was your motivation history? Something that you feel like you're diagnosed so late? Were there?
Yeah, I'm a Delta 508 and an RH117. So I think it's a milder mutation, but I guess the bottom line is CF is a progressive disease. And I was fortunate that, that I really exercised. And don't get me wrong, exercise was not easy. I exercise, I went out, I call it a jog. It wasn't a jog, it was a plod. But even, pre-transplant, the most important thing is to stay as healthy and active as you can so you can get through the transplant a lot easier. So when I got the call, the sixth call, which was the one, for the transplant, I actually went home because I used to call the family and it was like chaos and the stress. So this time I went home and they told me I had time because the lungs came from Florida. They said, no, you have time. They're flying, blah, blah, blah. So I went home very calmly, which they tell you not to, don't shower, don't do this. And I went home and I put my oxygen tank on. I only had to use it mainly as sleeping and a concentrator and like exercising and walking. But I would put it on and zip up the flow. And I called it jog because I wanted to be positive. But I would plod along. So I went for a little plod, and then I had reading glasses. So I said, oh, I better get some reading glasses. What am I going to do in the hospital? So, and mine broke. So I went to like Joy Reed and bought reading glasses. Went home, showered, and shaved. And then I took a deep breath, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Call the family. Then the chaos started. But yeah, I mean, the dry runs are crazy, just insane.
Sorry, one more question. You have a son with Rick, and you just read our book exactly how it's been forth with him and the smaller kid on the team that's pushing.
Oh, good.
And I mean, I did football, basketball, they think that they're athletes, but they're like, they sit on the end of the bench. How much did your parents keep you, although they said he's not going to be here long, but keeping you in a normal, average?
It's, I grew up and I had, at the time when I was younger, I had 3 brothers and a sister. And the 6 of us all together. But, my parents instilled in me a sense of independence from day one. There was no, they taught me about it. I was 11, I guess, but they didn't put out my pills, nothing. They would say, get in, take care of your medications, your pills and stuff. But, they didn't put out my pills in the morning for school or whatever. I did it all. I live in Brooklyn, and I would go to the doctor when I was in high school by myself. I mean, the bottom line, if there was a problem, the doctor was going to call. It wasn't going to I would go, oh yeah, everything's fine. So if most of the time everything was fine, but if there was an issue, it's different out here. Maybe you have to drive, but I could take a bus or a subway. And I would go to the doctor and I'd come back. And if I need to take pills, oh yeah, he wants me to take some pills, some antibiotic pills, some Cipros or whatever, Bactrums and whatever. And it really it was great because there was never, and that's where it was like, you cannot fail, don't worry, Jerry, it's going to be all fine if I got sick. So the independence was, and, my brothers, that was a whole other thing, would do a lot of my postural drainage, which turned into fist fights and breaking toys because they didn't do it right. And then my mother would be trying to cook and we'd be fighting over these little hockey game, what you do with the little twirlies and the little man runs, and she'd say, wait till your father gets home. And we'd be literally in fist fights. about, I'd be screaming at one brother, you're not doing it right, it hurts. And so my other brother would say, I'll do it. He'd throw off my other brother. He'd start doing it. And all three of them would be in a fist fight. And I'd be sitting there like, I didn't do anything. So, yeah, I think that my parents had a lot to do with it, with just really instilling a sense of independence and, just letting me get out there and live as normal as possible. But I did get sick. Don't get me wrong. I was sick a lot. Mm-hmm.
Post-transplant, were you affected much by diabetes?
Yeah, I have diabetes now post-transplant. It was probably the biggest problem I had, the biggest adjustment post-transplant, because before transplant, I would eat anything and everything. Post-transplant with this diabetes thing, it was like I had to reinvent my life. So that was probably post-transplant was my biggest issue, was diabetes and the sugars. And so I do carb counting now, and I take Lantus, and I take Novolog. I take long acting and short acting. But I do still produce insulin, so it's not, I have it really under control. Yeah. But that was I didn't have it before transplant. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah?
Quick question on the documentary. Is that about your kind of life story? Because I wish I could follow you up and save it our sentence for Lyndon B.
Yeah, it's
13, 14.
it's about me. It's about a lot of my life. It's about me coaching. It's more about being relentless. It's not just I mean, to watch it, if you didn't have CF and knew absolutely nothing about CF, you would probably enjoy it, because it's really not about CF. It's just about being relentless and overcoming obstacles. That's probably, yeah. And if you email me, I can send you the link. And I don't know if you follow, but it'll be posted up on Facebook. I think now, because we don't own the documentary, a director did it. But I think now it's up on Vimeo for like, I don't know, $6. But we're gonna release it in April sometime. But it's I will tell you, the documentary is probably more revealing than I would have liked. Only because what happened is, when it was all done, a lot of it was shot over 5 years, 6 years. So I didn't pay attention to much of it. So, and a lot of it was just conversations I'd be having with the director. So when it was all done, he says, you have to watch this and approve it. So I watched 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm not going to watch this 62-minute thing. It's me. I know who I am. And so I said, yeah, it's fine. And to make a long story short, he goes, are you sure you're fine? I said, yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal. And when it was all done, we had to send it to get grants from, hopefully from pharmaceuticals. And we had some pharmaceutical people sponsor it. To make a long story short, then, so some of these pharmaceuticals were sending me emails like, wow, Jerry, the story is amazing. And I didn't know all that about you. And you're so open and personal about your life. And I got this from one pharmaceutical. I said, oh, yeah, I'm just an open book. And then I thought that was kind of strange she said that. And then another pharmaceutical said almost the same exact thing. And then a third one said it. And then what happened was we had a premiere opening in New York. And well, they looked at it, they watched it at the foundation. And they said, come on, we're going to watch your documentary. I was like, no, I'm really busy. I don't want to see it. Okay, it's like not important. And so when it was over, a young lady I work with came in and says, wow, Jerry, it's pretty amazing. She said, I know a lot of your story, but I learned a lot more. So I said, let me ask you a question. Is there anything like personal in there? She's like, looks at me. She goes, what? You didn't watch it? I'm like, no. She goes, oh, you better watch it. You better watch it, right? So, especially because your pole vaulters are coming, to the opening. So I emailed the director, texted him that night, and the premiere was the next day. And I said, hey, I can't get into the documentary. I need the password again. Password's not working. And he's like, what do you need the password? You're real funny. I said, I need the password. I need to watch the documentary. So he says, ha ha, what, you're being funny. I said, no, just send me the damn password. I need to watch it. So he sends it to me, but he's like, listen, you can't change anything. It's done. You signed the agreement. It's done. I'm like, yeah, fine, whatever. So, yeah, but it's good. I mean, it's interesting. So, any other questions? And we'll show the last video. Yeah.
So for someone who isn't real familiar with exercise, but is interested in what you have to say and is maybe interested in starting out in using exercise as a way to improve their health, do you have any advice for those,
Yeah.
newbies that are maybe feeling a little overwhelmed?
So for the newbies that aren't really that involved with exercise, I would say, listen, you've got to start from ground zero. And the most important thing is just to get out there and put one foot in front of the other. I believe that, everybody can have an excuse. Well, I can't afford a gym membership. Well, that's why we talk about running a lot, because running doesn't cost you anything. I don't run now because of my knee replacement, but I bike year round, and running is a lot easier year round than biking. But I dress warm and I bike in New York in the snow, and I run, I should say, in New York, and there's snow or it's freezing. I do all of that. So, but for somebody else to get out there and set goals, say, hey, I'm going to go out and walk around the high school track 4 times, walk, and time yourself. Okay, you get a little watch or whatever, time yourself. You see what you do. You do that for a week or so. And you know what? Get a partner, your mom and dad, make it a family event. Go out and do it with them. And then after a week, go out there and say, okay, hey, I'm going to jog and walk. And you go out there and jog 15 feet, walk, catch your breath, do it again, do it again. Before you know it, you'll be jogging a mile. And it's the same with other sports, and it doesn't cost you a penny. And you can keep a little training. Like we have an Exercise for Life scholarship. And Boomer wasn't happy at first, but I was like, I'll take care of it. Because he's like, people have to jog a mile and a half. Okay? That's part of the requirements. It's a scholar athlete award. And when it comes to everybody's kind of the same area about, grades and financials, all of that stuff, we then go to the times, and they get a time trial. It's an individual time trial. We don't have a group, but we will fly out to Spokane. I said it correctly, right? I was saying to somebody, oh, I'm going to Spokane. And they're like, Gary, it's not pronounced Spokane. So, yeah, and we would fly out to the finalists and we will time them. But, everybody has a local track. And if you don't, all these watches now have these Garmin's, and you go out and do it with your mom and dad. Everybody can use, and everybody has Fitbits, and go out and walk and see what your time is, and then it progresses. It's like a domino effect, and that's the simplest way. There is no secret formula. Like people say to me, well, how have you done what you do? I said, look, there's no formula. It's just I work out hard, I train, and sometimes it's painful, and I practice good nutrition and all of those things. So that's probably the best way to get started. Yeah. I mean, look at your son. He's a phenomenal runner. But I'm not sure how he started, but.
So I was running marathons a while back, and he was 10 years old, and his New Year's resolution was to run a marathon. And I was like, son, you're a little bit young for that, but we can train for a half. He was a pretty good athlete anyway, so I trained him up for a half marathon, and he and I ran it together, and he won the 18 and under age group. Wow. 10-year-old, he ran an 8.5 minute pace. And from that, he just developed a love for it. And pretty soon I had a little knee tweak, and I couldn't run anymore. And then when I started trying to run with him again, he was beyond what I could do.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool now. He's running today. He runs the mile. So we're missing his first track meet today. But
yeah, I think what's really important too to realize it, and I'll stop there, is that I come from the apparel industry, the fashion industry, and so I was quite familiar with clothes and all of that, and I've taken some of that to a new dimension with You Cannot Fail. And in the apparel industry, so I'll talk, like people can go out and, there's probably 3, 4, 5% of the population that'll buy Giorgio Armani. The other 95% could be shopping at JCPenney, The Gap, and all that stuff. That's the major part of the business. So there's other people. So if you take that to the world of CF, you know, we see these other people, you know, and myself included. I've run some marathons and done some, you know, triathlon stuff, but that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. The other 95%, you know, they just got to get out and move and do stuff. So we don't want them now. We come with a new thing. Like we don't want everybody at the foundation. We don't want the foundation to say, people with CF looking at the foundation and say, oh, well, yeah, look at that. That guy does this. I can't do that. So we have a whole new thing we're working on. It's like, you know, although I can't run a marathon, you know, I walk around the block and I know I cannot fail. So everybody's the hero of their own story, whatever that story is. You know, although, you know, whatever, you know, although I have problems gaining weight, I do X, Y, Z because I know I cannot fail. I'm feeling depressed and I don't go out of the house, but today I'm going out and, you know, and I'm going to go to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee. And just that kind of a thing. It's just to get people to slowly start to transition and do that. Because if you look at it, it's like, look at that guy runs a marathon. Like, what the heck? And he doesn't really have CF or whatever. He has such a mild case, but we don't care. We want people just to get out there and start doing something and just make it a routine. It should be part of your daily therapy. Okay, you can throw that video on if you like, and we'll.
I do want to have Gary draw the name for the Team Boomer football.
Oh, don't ask me to throw it because you know my my football experience.
All right, Deanna Sove. So Deanna has a little boy at home. This is a perfect thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah. Can you hear it?
Cahill, running amidst the shore here, symbolizes his story, his past, present, and future. One word to define the odds has never been more extraordinary.
I was sick pretty much my whole life until they discovered I had cystic fibrosis at age 10. The doctors told my parents, you're lucky if your son makes it to his 16th birthday.
Cystic fibrosis is a fatal and chronic respiratory condition causing a thick buildup of mucus in the lungs. Ultimately a death sentence for Brooklyn-born Jerry Cahill.
I have a lot of colds, had pneumonia, and breathing becomes a major difficulty. My mom initially wanted to put me in a bubble and keep me at home, and my father, he said, well, if Jerry's not going to be around very long, he wanted me to spend a lot more time with my older brothers and quite involved with sports.
While so many cystic fibrosis patients reject the idea of competitive sports and hardcore conditioning, for Jerry, this became his passion. He went on to pole vault at the University of Connecticut and is now even a coach himself.
That's aggressive. That's good.
I think he just loves to see kids learn from him something that he is so emotional about, so passionate about. I know how much Jerry has to prep himself at the beginning of the day to know how many pills he has to take and the nebulizers he uses. Having CF has ever deterred Jerry from anything he wanted to do. Jerry Cahill likes to live by his father's mantra, you cannot fail. After all, at 56 years old, Jerry has survived far past the average life expectancy of 37 for those with CF. It's perhaps this mantra that led Jerry to working with a former All-Pro quarterback.
Just from being a dad and cystic fibrosis child, the original goal, and it always has been the goal, is to raise enough money to cure the disease. Jerry wanted to volunteer, and he all of a sudden became my eyes and ears within the community of cystic fibrosis itself. He was knocking on doors, pounding the pavement, meeting people, communicating with all the things that are going on in the world of cystic fibrosis.
Jerry is a visionary, and he had this vision. He talked about having a race in Central Park 5 years ago. And, it's baby steps with any program. And 2 years ago was our inaugural year, and it was a huge success. It was him being out there with his oxygen tank that showed people, you cannot fail, and you can do this too.
Somebody who is caught running into our foundation, and that is Jerry Cahill, and you heard it. I would tell you that he's the hero in our CF community. There has to be somebody living, breathing, and to be an example of the way it should be.
But despite this newfound sense of euphoria among the CF community, Jerry's own life was spiraling downwards. His health was deteriorating at a rapid pace.
I was getting sick. I couldn't walk up the flight of stairs without really getting out of breath.
He was suffering from a lot of lost adrenaline lungs. As the patient gets sicker, they almost have get some episodes where they get admitted to the hospital, and all of a sudden they're having real trouble breathing. It becomes apparent to them that they're not going to get along very much longer. One bad episode could make them from transplant candidates to too sick for transplant. On April 17th, 2012, Jerry Cahill entered the most challenging race of his life yet, a double lung transplant, forever changing every breath he'd take.
The next 24 hours is kind of all you can think about. I know I didn't sleep that night, and I know a lot of people didn't either.
It's a very, very long 5 to 8 hours. The reality is, please come out of that operation. Just having the transplant doesn't mean that, I'm out of the woods, but I can breathe. Well, I think about the donor every day, somebody had to die so that I could live. Because of that, I'm here today. That's why every day is a gift, and I think about the donor every day. Dr. Simon sent me an email, and he said, hey, I'm running in emergency to breathe. I don't know if you're going to be running. And I saw this email, and I had to take a second look at it. But I know I'm crazy. So this guy nuts. I just had a transplant.
He jumped on the opportunity, and I think I had trouble keeping up with it.
And about halfway through the race, I saw Jerry in front of me. Jerry ran up next to him and was sitting there running. I think he was struggling. Look, he's ridiculous. And I'm looking at him, he's smiling. That smile told me that his life is good. This is what he loves more than anything. I love it.
We knew going into the race this year that it was definitely going to be a celebration of life. We also needed time from the year before He has always known that anything is possible.
Jerry Cahill is undetermined SOB. And for those of us who are around him, we're better people for him being in our life. Average life expectancy right now is cystic fibrosis is 37. And I'm 56.
Thank you so much. I mean, so inspiring and encouraging, and that's, I've heard such good things about Jerry from all over the CF community, so I'm so glad we got to experience him in person. So thank you again so much. And I'm really excited because our speaker after lunch is Nicole, and she's a physical therapist who's worked with both peds and adults, and part of her talk is actually going to be exercise, because again, we kind of have a theme. So some of the questions like Rebecca asked, Nicole's going to be able to address some of that. So really excited about that, and I think, go watch those videos, look up the stuff that's online, register to be an organ donor if you haven't, because remember, we have to, all of us that have organs we can donate should, if we can. And yes, go talk to Jerry before he's leaving. But go ahead, and we're going to break for lunch. We're a little off, which is totally okay because we're adjusting the schedule a little bit. So let's plan on eating coming back at about 1:25.